Welcome to the launch of Earth and Glimmer, a collection of poems and pieces of prose by Haya Fatima Sehgal. A nice round of applause, please. Haya is a journalist, and she writes for, I think, a couple of newspapers, and she's a security analyst. Last year, she came out with a book titled Resilient Pakistan, which is a collection of her essays, and it was very well received. Got rave reviews. Now this one is a different kettle of fish. When Liberty got in touch with me, so I said, "Bhai, kitab bhej dein." So I read the book. It was in a PDF file, initially when I read it. And I was completely, utterly invested in it for two reasons, primarily for two reasons. One, the uninhibited projection of personal ideas and impersonal collective concerns, and two, the use of simple but powerful language. And she has this uncanny ability of coming up with really very good, sonorous, meaningful, powerful phrases. For example, in the introduction to the book, she writes, she mentions getting stuck in the transit of her decisions, sometimes spiraling into storms of bad relationships. Now, this is a gutsy and a really poetic admission. The title of the book is Earth and Glimmer. Just to give you a sense of the title, she writes, serendipity will always be there, as well as those moments of happenstances, those moments that peeked at us from our everyday life. Some people call them glimmers, hence the word glimmer in the title. Some people call them glimmers, others call them by different names. I just know they were the light which gave me the will to live. Really wonderful. You already know what they are. So this is the book that we have here. And the publishers call it, and I think rightly so, they use the adjective polemical. It's a polemical. Let's begin from the beginning. Tell me something about your place of birth, your school, higher education, and then we'll go from there.
I went to, I was born in Karachi,
okay.
And I've written about Karachi,
okay.
in Pakistan, and this is my country.
Okay.
And most of my book, and I think I'll answer it the other way around. I think the book is semi-autobiographical, and it deals with me growing up here, then moving abroad, and then coming back here.
Abroad where?
I went to America,
okay.
And I spent a couple of years over there, almost 10 years, and then when I came back, I felt that I changed, so I lived different lives, okay. Different incarnations, as they say, right? Okay. And I went to grammar school, Karachi Grammar School. Growing up, I was influenced by two very wonderful women in my life, my grandmothers. And I think the book translates that correctly. The background of where I was from, my ancestor, down to my father, my mother, and then my family. Right.
Yesterday, when we struck up a conversation for the first time, you told me this very interesting story about your school teacher, I think Urdu teacher at grammar school.
Yes.
Can you?
Urdu.
So, and she called you a shaira, I guess.
So this is very interesting, even though the book is in English. The first person who told me that I was a poetess was my Urdu teacher in Karachi Grammar School, Mrs. Riaz, and she used to call me a shaira because I wrote something in my teens, and I didn't believe her. So I shrugged it off, and somebody said she must be smiling up from heaven because, or wherever she is, that, you don't think in that manner because when you're younger, you don't think that you are something because you're told that you're not, and you go through your life and you come back to it all at once.
But how did it feel to be a bona fide poet now?
Well, thank you for calling me bona fide.
But you are a published author now.
Yes, and thank you for Liberty for taking the chance on this. Yes, I think this had to come out. It was all of this is a part of my life as I experienced it for 20 years living here. Whatever I felt, whether it was persecution, whether I saw it, whether it was on myself, I think it started to come out, and whatever I experienced, whether it was trauma, I think it just came out. And sometimes as people, we don't know where to put these feelings. I just put them into words.
Because you see, prose and poetry, two different, it's a different kettle of fish. Poetry is a different kettle of fish. So when did you realize that you could write poetry as well? Because you write very good articles for the Tribune. I've read some of them. But poetry is a different kettle of fish. So,
yes.
and it requires a different set of skills as well.
I think that anybody who has the creative mindset, I don't think they can be limited to this, that this is what you're going to do. If you are an artist, then you possibly are just going to paint. I think different people experience it in different ways and over a different period of time. And you can express it in different ways. So I think a person who has that, and I believe everybody has that ounce of creativity within them, I think they can be different things in their lives. I think that time has changed where we were assigned and allocated our roles. I think we are beyond that now.
Okay.
That if you are in a certain profession, that you cannot choose another one. And I think anybody can write, and I think anybody can do whatever they feel like.
Okay, now T.S., I've read the entire book and I really liked it. T.S. Eliot, one of my favorite poets, he says the poet always writes out of his personal life. In its finest work, out of its tragedy. It may be loss, loneliness, love. Do you agree? And if you agree, would you like to expand on it?
I think I've met several writers, and for everybody it's not necessarily so. However, for me, in this case, yes, it was. It was trauma, and it was the overpowering of many feelings and emotions, going through. It's almost like a migration when you come back. You know, you have to unknow and unravel yourself and build yourself all over again. And then you have to fit into a certain point, and that in itself for any human can be, it's a turning point in their lives.
And it can be very taxing, actually.
It can be very taxing, and it has many connotations for you because you're now dealing with so many different relationships. And although the majority, ironically enough, the majority of my poems, even when I thought of loss or love, I think the majority of the poems dealt with the country. Lesser with, I think there were about 5 poems on love and about 100 poems on how I felt about where I was, the safe space that I was living in, and I think everybody in this country feels that way in some manner or the other.
And where do the personal and the political or the social overlap in your work? Do they overlap?
Not in my articles, of course, but in Earth and Glimmer, yes, it is about me.
And what I really liked about your poems is, and there's this incisive blend of the personal and the political. For example, there's I would urge you guys to read that poem. It's called The River Indus, if I'm not mistaken.
Indus, yes.
It's a very, very incisive work of art. And where you come up with this very interesting phrase, you say, the river through which the blood of grief runs. Now, this is really, really poignant. And then the very next poem is Unnatural, which has that personal tinge to it, where you say there's no places for you to cry. Do you reconcile the two, or are these two different strands altogether?
The entire book is connected. It's linked to the running theme, which is finding a home. And I think that is your place. Whether it is, I wrote about that space that you find when you put your forehead down to the ground, whether it is the smell of a sweater of somebody that you loved, in my case my grandmother, not a man in that one, but it could be anything. It is that, or curling up in a cocoon in a womb-like state, whether it is your land, whether it is your family home, whether it is your memory, whether it is yourself, whether it's your spirit. So the book goes in layers and it's connected.
Okay.
It goes in this motion. And the river Indus, as far as that was concerned, it is very symbolic for us. It has seen so much bloodshed done to us, but we have been doing the doing for so long as Pakistan, and we as a country we were witnesses, but now the land becomes our witness. It sees us souls
very nicely
being
put.
left behind.
You strongly feel about your country and your society.
I do.
And there are certain things that hurt you. It's indicative in your book. What are those things that hurt you about your society?
I think the promised land that we were
Yeah, The Promised Land is another very good poem. Huh?
I think that is, it was simple and short, yes, but it encompasses the entire book, that here we are on earth, and I had written 200,000 years of existence and civilization, and here we kill each other on just different belief sets. This is what we do.
And this brings me to this particular piece. It's called, ladies and gentlemen, this is called Grief. Grief, I think I grieve the loss of my grief more than anything, as now everybody tells me how I must do so. This reminds me of an Urdu verse by John Elia. जो इन रोज़ों मेरा गम है वो ये है, गमों की बुर्दबारी जा रही है. Now this roughly translates as, these days what I grieve is that the forbearance of my grief is vanishing. This is John Elia. And I mean, this is serious condition. This is something to mull over. And the loss of grief. Would you like to expand on that? Or yes, societal, is it like a societal concern?
Not one, but many people have spoken about grief in different ways and loss. We are always told how to grieve. We have wonderful self-help books to get over it. We have steps to get over it. But how do you really get over it? How can you get over the loss of a loved one? Whether it's a child, whether it's your mother, whether it's your grandmother, whatever it is, how can you stop grieving? And now you have people telling you in steps how to get there. And somehow, as a human being, how do you get there? And yes, I'm supposed to, and I will. I know that as a human being, that I will, of course, because that's what I need to portray to the world. And I think everybody feels like that. There is no value that can be assigned to that, and there's no value, which brings me to loss. And I think you know what I said about loss. Yes.
Okay, now
that there were too many sounds and there were too many words to be contained inside this universe. That you cannot put some value to it, and you cannot have the steps to it.
Well, let's talk about the form of these poems and pieces of prose. Some of them are very, very short, very aphoristic, very pithy, and there are certain pieces that are longish.
They're a few pages long. Yes, correct.
But for example, ladies and gentlemen, I find this is a one-line piece. It's called Family. Those people who don't hit and hurt or break us. How good is that? No? And then there's another one. It's called Loss. Too many words and too many sounds to contain inside this universe. It's a very aphoristic style. So, ये कहाँ से सीखा आपने?
In answer to that, the book has been written in the open, it's called the open style. There are some VSS short stories, very short stories, and then those lines that you saw, they are part of commentaries. Sometimes a poet is given a challenge, a word prompt, and you have these groups and they give you 24 hours and you have to think of something in a whole entire group. And it can be a line, it can be an ode. It doesn't matter. Nobody is judging you, because as artists we don't do that to each other.
True.
Right? And so I formulated this as poetry, as prose, and then we didn't say was commentary. And war was one of them, loss was one of them, and grief was one of them.
You know, the W.H. Auden says, poetry is the clear expression of mixed feelings. Is it something like that, isn't it?
I think it's a whole bag of mixed feelings.
Okay. And do you have any favorite poets, fiction writers?
Yes, of course. When I was very young, my grandmother gave me, she allowed me to take out from her shelf a book, and it was Khalil Gibran's Tears and Laughter.
Okay.
She had a little shelf, and any of us could go and get that out. In fact, the last poem that comes, Earth and Glimmer, is dedicated to her. I wrote my love in it, but I meant Ma.
Okay.
Right. And they had a very great influence on my lives, and which I must tell you before anything. I think the audience should know that both of them were Bengali.
Bengali?
Right? Yes, and which is why from the beginning, from the first poem, I started from sifting, and that is about India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. And it's a running theme throughout this book.
You speak Bengali?
I can understand it, yes.
Okay.
Right. And so as far as Khalil Gibran is concerned, that was my first, and then I didn't know I wanted to be like that, and then I saw some of his paintings, which people don't know about, and I said, oh my God, he's an artist.
You are multi-talented, okay.
And then the second book, and I think we just spoke about it because you asked me this.
Let's keep that for later.
Emily Dickinson was Emily Dickinson. And that was a book given to me in college by a young man, and he wrote me a letter, and he gave me a rock, and me being me, I threw the rock, and I lost the letter, but I kept the book. And that was the book on Emily Dickinson, and I loved that book. I carried it with me, and it's a piece by her, and I think everybody feels this way at one point. And it says, I'm nobody, who are you? Are you nobody too?
Wow.
And I think that affected me a lot. And I was 18, and I said, it's all right to put my feelings down that I've been hiding. Somewhere they were written down. I think now it's time to do it because it's all right to say so. There are these moments where you get when you think, can I say this? And then you say, I think it's all right.
Okay, the difficult question now.
Go
Your
for it.
favorite 3 poems from this book?
You're asking a poet to choose their own poems. Memory Home.
Okay.
It's about growing up and and my home, and it ends with home should not be a place where it hurts to live. And that encapsulates the entire book, just that last paragraph, that this country should have been my safe space. It should have been a safe space for everybody else, for vulnerable communities. This is where we are today. And I think this book has to do with what we are facing today as a nation.
Okay.
And that's one. And then the other one was, and I didn't realize somebody would pick that out. We have somebody very special with us who's going to read that out in the end. It was a safe space, you know. So it was on that, and then there is another one which is hope.
Okay.
And I think that has come up time and again. Glimmers is a moments that I believe different people define glimmers differently. I believe they are those moments in your life, or even people that come into your life that just save you. And those moments happen with everybody. There's not a single person out here that cannot say it. And I described it as different things. It was the morning light into my cup of coffee. It was that bowl of cereal that looked up at you. It was hues from the ocean as you flew over it. And it was something a child said to me that made me ashamed to be an adult. So these moments happen to different people, and these are moments of glimmers. And from glimmers come that moment of hope which is inside every human being, that need to survive, and that their will to move past whatever they're going through.
Excellent. So last question from my side. Since you have tremendous creative flair,
Have this mic.
so I was saying since you have creative flair, is a novel on the anvil? Is it in the offing? Novel?
You do ask good questions, actually. That's why I enjoyed having you as a moderator, and we will talk afterwards. Yes, I do have one. I've already spoken to my publisher, and that's definitely coming. One is based on, one is the second part. I created the series Earth, Air, Wind and Water because the act of persecution and superstition is a running theme throughout in this book, and so I use the magical elements. I Spirit is coming out next.
Okay, excellent.
That's another one. I've been in talks with American publisher, and the third one is a think tank, and that would be on extremism and counterterrorism.
Okay. Thank you so much. A round of applause for her, please. And now we have a very prominent, famous artist, actor Adil Hussain with us. He's going to recite a few poems from the book. Please, Adil. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everybody. And good afternoon. I'd like to congratulate Haya on the launch of her book and all the people involved in helping it see the light of day. And without further ado, I'll be reading a few pieces, some that resonated with me and some with her, and we won't be discussing which is which. So I'll start with one called They Called Me Hope. I am a chance, thought by the one, subjugated, a shimmer that crosses the man, subdued, lying in the angst of the oppressed, now overpowering the oppressor. Called by different words in ancient, different languages, somebody cried out kneeling and found me when lost. You once thought of me decimated, lying naked in my shell. I am in fables passed down, an odd superstition to you from days gone. But you tell me you don't believe in anything, that nothing, neither I, exist. I am not fighting nor questioning your beliefs. You must believe in what you feel is your truth. I am only a bequeathed anecdote, inherited stories, an axiom coming from a point of origin. Life lit within different versions, but the ending is the same. I am not the David of any story. I didn't slay Goliath, but somebody must have thought of me there. I cannot move that mountain. I don't even know if I can save you. I am just a fleeting split second of survival, a tiny ounce of strength that kindles the fire and turns your circumstances around. I am inside of you, something innate to your being, delicately sutured into your soul. A glimmer. You once called me an illusion of humanity, but the humans, whether they believed in me or not, just called me by my name. They called me Hope.
Well done.
And this one is called Line of Control. Walking on the edge of water that night, people danced madly in the background noise of our movie. But with you and around you, there was no sound, no feigned conversation. We gathered, we already knew each other. The constraint that defined our race disappeared into the water as we dared to walk on the border of ease. All in the wet sand melting beneath our feet as people were shot in our countries. But that day, we weren't there, were we? We didn't think the battle would reach us. All our reserves didn't exist in that utter moment. Decades of a silent war. We were the same people, just ordinary people. That one day, thrown on either side of each other's fence. I hope you never come back here, my friend. We were born on either side as a joke, and I cannot lose my line of control again.
Wow.
This one is called Directions to Our Safe Space. To whom it may concern, if you find these directions helpful, come meet me out there sometime. I promise you, there is safety. In a very small dimension of this grand multiverse, there's a chance given to lovers not of this world. There is this space which lies hidden still. With no address and no names written, you will find no borders to guard it, nor any database where it may be searched for. It is a far away, a silent promise. Never a surety if it is even there at all. It remains unfound in an orbit of which only few would acknowledge from their heart. You may have heard of it set somewhere on uneven terrain as they whisper about these places that are often left on unmapped trails. You can trace its location back to where the split of the horizon occurs. It starts from the scar lines of my sorrow. Your basilisk dreams that beckon me so may have even hissed out its secret name. And when you decide to seek that hidden door, don't forget the compass to guide you. It bears the stars of longing and hurt. There are those tracks we all know that sometimes have no lights to illuminate them. When you pass the 7 stones marker on the road, come where the 7 kings and 7 seas cannot separate us. You would have found the cornerstone of an abode that is only visible to those who understand what it means to love. Can you see our selfish garden from the corner of your soul? It is where we both eloped, near ancient mangroves that waited for us. They are trees of want, of our own invention. It is there we have both learned to breathe amongst the fallen fields. Come meet me in our moment of Elysium. There in a dimension where we both reside, each spirit is buried inside of each other's soul. It is that place where nobody can know. It lies only between you and me, our universe that has always been there, encrypted and unspoken. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Adil. That was very good. Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much for your time. Book signing will take place at Liberty Stall at what time?
At
3:15. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much.
Da